Imagine tuning into your favorite talk show, expecting laughter, light banter, and maybe a witty exchange or two about movies. Instead, the curtain of Hollywood's carefully constructed facade rips open in real time. Denzel Washington, one of the most respected names in cinema, leans forward in that deliberate, commanding way only he can, and suddenly the room feels electric. He isn't there to promote a film, to crack jokes, or to indulge in the usual PR script. No, he's there to expose something far darker, something whispered about in late-night conversations but never dared to be spoken on camera. There's a pact in Hollywood, he declares. A secret pact that controls careers, dictates narratives, and silences those who step out of line. The silence that follows isn't just from the audience. It's from a whole industry collectively holding its breath. And then, to the shock of everyone, he names Whoopi Goldberg. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That moment alone could have gone down as an odd celebrity soundbite. But Denzel's words weren't just vague insinuations. They came backed with hints of evidence, stories from the past, and allusions to buried scandals. Whoopi's face told the whole story. She froze, her usually sharp comedic instincts abandoned her, and all she could mutter was, "This is terrible." And terrible it was, not because she didn't know what he was talking about, but because in her eyes you could almost read an admission. She knew. She had been part of it, even if unwillingly. This wasn't about gossip anymore. This was about decades of power, manipulation, and control that had just been ripped out of the shadows. It's hard to overstate just how seismic this was. Hollywood thrives on control, not just over the images of stars but over public perception itself. Who gets to rise, who gets to fall, which scandals vanish overnight, and which ones are dragged into the spotlight. All of it, Denzel suggested, was the result of a behind-the-scenes network, an unspoken agreement among elites. For years, audiences may have suspected that some stars were blacklisted for mysterious reasons or that certain careers skyrocketed without explanation. But to hear it said so plainly, so bluntly, by one of Hollywood's biggest names, that was different. And the fact that Whoopi didn't outright deny it, that she visibly crumbled under the weight of his claim, only fueled the fire. What did she know? How deep was she in? And perhaps the bigger question, who else was in on it? The fallout was immediate. Within hours, networks scrambled to contain the story. Talk show producers cut segments, social media teams went into overdrive, and PR specialists drafted statements that felt oddly rehearsed, almost as if they had contingency plans in place for a moment like this. But what nobody anticipated was that the silence would break so quickly. Documents began leaking, old contracts, memos, and testimonies that hinted at systematic silencing and manipulation. Rising stars who had mysteriously vanished from the spotlight suddenly had their names trending again, their stories resurfacing as puzzle pieces in a much larger picture. For the first time in decades, the public wasn't content with the polished statements. They wanted answers. They wanted accountability. Whoopi found herself in an impossible position. For years, she had been one of the most respected voices in entertainment, a powerhouse with an EGOT to her name, someone audiences trusted. And yet now she stood at a crossroads. If she denied Denzel's claims outright, she risked provoking him into releasing even more damning evidence. But if she admitted to being pressured into silence all these years, she'd be confirming what millions were already beginning to believe, that Hollywood was not simply a place of talent and opportunity, but a machine designed to control. Her hesitation only made things worse. Every facial expression, every pause, every carefully worded sentence was dissected by the public. She knows more than she's saying, fans whispered online. And the more she tried to move past it, the more impossible it became. Meanwhile, Denzel wasn't alone anymore. Other celebrities began coming forward, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. An actress who had been blacklisted after a fiery interview in the late 90s suddenly resurfaced, sharing her story of being told to play along or disappear. A once rising male comedian confessed that a scandal that ruined his career had actually been orchestrated to keep him quiet about what he saw backstage. Even some producers and insiders, retired now, free from the shackles of current contracts, began validating Denzel's claims. One of them even admitted, "We had meetings about this. We knew who was on the list, who had to be kept in check, who was going to be pushed forward as the next big thing. It wasn't random. It was strategy." What once sounded like conspiracy was rapidly gaining credibility. Public outrage grew to a fever pitch. The idea that their favorite stars, their childhood heroes, and even entire movements in entertainment could have been orchestrated by a handful of elites didn't just feel like a betrayal, it felt like theft. Audiences had invested emotionally in these stories, rooting for underdogs, celebrating comebacks, mourning public downfalls. And now, to learn that so much of it might have been scripted behind closed doors was infuriating. The hashtags trended globally. Hashtag Hollywood Pact, hashtag Whoopi Knew, hashtag Denzel Exposed. Calls for transparency morphed into something even bigger, demands for congressional hearings into media manipulation, monopolistic practices, and the hidden networks pulling the strings of an industry that shaped culture itself. Suddenly, this wasn't just Hollywood gossip. It was a political issue, and while some condemned Denzel as reckless, even dangerous, others rallied behind him. To many, he was doing what nobody else had the courage to do. Risk his career, his reputation, and possibly his safety to tell the truth. That kind of bravery resonated deeply, especially in an era when audiences were already skeptical of traditional media. People wanted heroes, and in that moment, Denzel was one. Whoopi, on the other hand, became a symbol of complicity. Not because she was the villain, but because she represented the moral dilemma so many others in the industry faced. Stay silent and survive, or speak up and risk everything. What made the story even more gripping was the way it snowballed. Every day brought new revelations, new testimonies, new documents. Old interviews were rewatched with fresh eyes. Subtle slips in past award speeches, awkward silences in press junkets, sudden career shifts. All were reinterpreted as signs of the pact. The narrative wasn't just about Whoopi anymore. It was about the very fabric of Hollywood. And the more the public pulled on the thread, the more the carefully woven tapestry began to unravel. Of course, with a story this explosive, the stakes were enormous. Networks feared advertiser backlash. Studios worried about lawsuits. Politicians saw an opportunity to ride the wave of outrage, demanding investigations while also carefully distancing themselves from their own Hollywood ties. And behind the scenes, whispers circulated that there were efforts to silence Denzel, to discredit him, to make him out as unstable. But unlike so many before him, Denzel had an advantage: his credibility. Decades of respected work, an untarnished reputation, and a career built not on scandals, but on sheer talent made him nearly impossible to dismiss. That's why the panic was so great. If even he couldn't be silenced, then maybe, just maybe, the entire system could fall. But here's the question that lingers in the minds of millions. How far does this go? If there truly is a pact, who else is tied to it? Which careers were destroyed because of it? Which scandals were buried? And perhaps most importantly, how many more celebrities are sitting quietly, waiting for the right moment to step forward with their own stories? If Denzel has sparked a movement, then Hollywood may never look the same again. The curtain has been pulled back, and once you've seen what's behind it, you can't unsee it. And maybe that's the real power of this revelation. For so long, audiences accepted Hollywood's magic at face value, never questioning what lay beneath. Now, people are asking the uncomfortable questions, challenging the glossy surface, and demanding change. Perhaps this will lead to a new era, one where stars can rise without strings attached, where scandals can't be buried with hush money, and where voices that once would have been silenced finally get to be heard. Or maybe, as some cynics warn, the machine will find a way to repair itself, patch up the leaks, and continue as before. That's the cliffhanger we're all standing on, waiting to see which way the story turns. But one thing is certain: Hollywood will never be able to put this genie back in the bottle. Denzel has started something that can't be undone. And whether you love him, fear for him, or disagree with him, you can't deny the courage it takes to stand against an empire built on silence. The real question is, who will stand with him? Will audiences continue to push for accountability? Will more stars join him in tearing down the pact? Or will the industry tighten its grip, reminding everyone just how powerful it still is?